Hello.
Welcome, everybody, to the show. Our usual co-host and fellow traveler, Dan the Dan Noodles Man, is AWOL at this time. Hopefully everything is okay, but he did send me that little video clip. Joining us this evening is our very special guest, Mr. David Thompson. David, thanks once again for doing this with us. We appreciate it. So I'd like to talk about collaborative design, and I can think of no better person to talk about that than you, because a lot, if not all of your designs have been co-designs with somebody.
Pretty much. I mean, early on, I have a couple of credited as solo designs, but pretty much now it's exclusively collaborative designs.
Okay. Now, how at the time at which you hadn't collaborated with anybody yet, how did that situation develop? Did you run into Trevor or somebody like that and say, "Hey, let's do a game together"? Or is that how it went down?
I mean, pretty much. So when I started, I mean, I know you know this, but I came into board games, war games, everything pretty late. And so 2012-ish or so, 2013 is when I started playing, really kind of started thinking about designing. And it's when I moved to the UK. And Trevor was part of a much larger playtest and design group in Cambridge that I was in. So what turned into a really valuable local playtest and co-design and mutual designer meetup turned into just naturally collaborative design. And in that group in Cambridge, there's a lot of published designers, and almost everybody in that group operates that way in collaborative design. Okay.
So in what do the nuts and bolts of that look like? Is that you sit down together and hash out an idea and then just keep batting stuff back and forth until it's done? How does that work? Do you have like a series of stages that you work through?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's very person dependent. There's certain people that I work with multiple times, like Trevor, Roger Tankersley, Laura, Liz Davidson. So for those people that I've worked with, more than once, twice, whatever, that pattern seems to be pretty similar. And what I mean by that is we'll get together, and I can circle back to this. We'll get together. Usually one person has the core idea to start with, but put a pin in that and come back to that because that's an interesting aside. But we'll come to the other one, and with those three people who I spend most of my design time with, it's a very similar approach where all of the design work, the actual gameplay design, happens together online at the same time. We don't go away and work on things and then come back and throw them over the fence. It's always together. Only at late stage sort of play testing development do we ever go away and do things independent. Now there's a lot of things that are happening independent. I'll work on graphics or TTS modules or whatever, or one of them will write the rules, but no gameplay, no design work. Now that's different than relationships I've had with other people. Sometimes I'll work with a designer and it's more of that, one person works on something for a while, maybe they test it, they say, hey, I'm at a place, I'll give it to you. And I think a lot of co-designers work that way. I'm not great at that. So my preference definitely is to no kidding, do all the design work, real time together. Now, one thing I said, I'll put go back and take the pin off, I guess, and talk about it. So I have tried a couple of times with a co-designer to say, let's get together and brainstorm an idea. That's horrible. That never works. You need somebody to come with that initial, at least the kernel of an idea of, hey, here's a historical topic, or here's a mechanism, or whatever it is, whatever the beginning of it is. I've just not had a lot of luck when you just get two people to sit down and say, the sky's the limit, no constraints. Let's make a game together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Jeff T, for the support. It is much appreciated. You didn't have to do that to help with the shipping, but I do appreciate it. So when we look back at what I would consider a real successful series, like the Valiant Defense series, who's the first one was Pavlov's House, as I recall, and so who came up with that, and was the mechanical approach a different idea than the idea of, hey, let's do Pavlov's House, this famous thing in Stalingrad?
Okay, so Yeah, real quick. So Castellitter was actually the first design. Pavlov's House was published first. So Castellitter came first, then Pavlov's House, then the rest. Those are Castellitter and Pavlov's House. I'm the only designer on. So
Okay.
Castellitter was sort of my first attempt at a solo war game design, and then Pavlov's House with a follow up. Now the other games in the series, Soldiers and Postmen's Uniforms. Michael Kochman is the credited co-designer. He's a hardcore gamer, war gamer, but he also is from Gdansk in Poland. And I went and met with him, and we did research together. And so sometimes on war games, what I'll do is I will, because I think it's the most appropriate, I'll credit a co-designer when they're probably best articulated as like a co-creator, meaning like they were the lead from a historical perspective and they were also a gamer, but maybe not a traditional co-designer, meaning we shared that 50-50. So Michael was that. And then because Nils Johansson and I work so closely together, we're just sort of on the box together on the front of Landsworth Bridge because the topography in that game was so important to the game design itself.
Battle of the Bulge, go figure.
Right, yeah. I know. And then I had a similar arrangement with Nicola Segini for By Stealth and Sea, where he had worked on a similar topic. He had a bunch of ideas. A lot of the actual core gameplay was me, but all the historical expertise certainly, and the concept of like integration of the campaign and historical elements came from him. So each game has its own little story and how it's different than the others, but.
Okay, hopefully, Jeff, this is a little bit better. I know my volume can be a little loud. It's easier for me to just swivel the microphone a little further away. So I am loud and David is less loud. So you should hear my sister-in-law who is staying with us right now. She's like a flock of harpies. So anyway, so you've got a collaborative design coming out from GMT that probably a lot of us have on our radar at this point. So I have multiple questions about that. Who's the co-designer? How do you pronounce it? Are the two leading questions.
Yeah.
Jeff Engelstein? Is that
Jeff Engelstein?
Okay.
Jeff Engelstein is the co-designer. Jeff came to me with the idea. He pitched the idea of working on it together. And Jeff had, I don't know the exact story, but Jeff had talked to Gene at GMT about the idea, and that was it. And Gene was interested, and so Jeff approached me about collaborating on it. Certainly, the core of the concept was Jeff. So I guess we should. The name of the game is Chung Ha. So it's about the admiral who led the Ming voyages, the Chinese Ming voyages. So so that's the answer to the other question. But my attempt to pronounce it is Chung Ha.
So I took in college, I took a history of modern China class, and about the first 2 weeks was them teaching us the various ways to transliterate Chinese into the Latin script. And there's more than one, and it's confusing. And I remember I remember a bunch of it. I just keep getting all the three different things, Wei Giles and Pinyin and something else that we had to use for the material in the class, and I can't keep them straight nowadays. So, but I am aware of the famous Chinese admiral. There's references, believe it or not, in a number of science fiction works that I can think.
No, yeah, that makes sense. I think there might have been. I'm confident there was a Chung Ha ship in Star Trek somewhere.
I believe that's correct too. I'm thinking of Werner Vinge's "Fire Upon the Deep" is the book I'm thinking of, which is a really good book if anybody's read it. But so this is a perfect example of Peking. Peking is the old Wade Giles. We would pronounce it Peking. Beijing is a lot closer to the Chinese pronunciation, and that's the Pinyin transliteration scheme, as I recall. So, but I'm excited about that as well. What else do you have coming up that's in development right now that you can talk about? Because I know that some of the folks you work with are very strict about keeping the lid on it until it's ready.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so Liz and I are working still. We're waiting on Night Witches. I know you're tracking it. So Night Witches, Liz Davidson co-designed it with me.
And it's neat.
And it's coming from Fort Circle. So certainly we're both very excited about that. That Liz may wind up in a situation like I've done before, where I've designed a couple of games and the one I designed first comes out second. So It's possible that even though Night Witches was her first design, it won't be her first published game, but we'll see. She and I also have another game coming out called Queen of Spies. It's a game where you take the lead role of managing like a spy organization in occupied Belgium. That's coming out from Salt and Pepper.
That sounds pretty cool too.
Yeah, it's really interesting. They're very very different games. I think of Queen of Spies. You know, if anybody's watching, listening, that's familiar with War Story, the game I did with Dave Neal. It's a very narrative. I mean, it is a narrative game. You're reading passages, etc. It's interesting because Queen of Spies is not like that at all, but it provides you a very emergent narrative. Meaning, as you're playing, it really kind of paints the picture of in this little town, and you're running your network of spies, and it's really cool. I've had a lot of fun playing it. I think I actually prefer playing it more than the Night Witches. And again, so Liz and I always do all of our design work together, like I mentioned before. So even though it's a exclusively solo game, we always play it collaboratively, which is how I love to play solo games.
I can understand that. Is Liz also a morning person that gets up at 4 a.m. every day to get work out?
Yep. Yep.
That is beyond my comprehension.
Friends. That's how we became friends. Is that about the time I started designing was about the time she started her YouTube channel, and she reviewed Pavlov's House. And so somehow after her review, she and I started talking, and she and I are the only two people that I know of, wake at 4 a.m. And so we would just start messaging each other. And over the years that became co-designs and friends. And
Now, as somebody who's done a lot of collaboration, are you usually the idea person, or is your collaborator usually the idea person, or is it 50-50 or what?
So you can kind of tell based on the game and who I've designed it with. And so what I mean by that is if I do any sort of like historical war adjacent war game or whatever with Trevor, that means it definitely came from me. If we do a game together that is not historical war adjacent or whatever, it came from Trevor. It's less obvious when it comes for like me and Liz, right? So she and I have about a list about 3 miles long on games we want to do together, and we'll toss something on the list, and both of us have to immediately become super passionate. So sometimes it becomes hard to even remember who generated the idea to begin with. And then Roger, I'll just mention the people again that I work with the most. Roger and I, so we've done Sniper Elite together. The two of us work with Trevor on Resist and Witchcraft. Roger and I have a game. I guess it's been announced now. This is really cool. It's called Flintlock. So it is, if you're familiar with Paolo Mori's Blitzkrieg, World War II in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I've got that.
So Roger and I are both huge fans of that game. I'm also a huge fan of Paolo's work. So Roger and I took Blitzkrieg, and we made a 7 Years War game, set like Europe 7 Years War, and we made a French and Indian War game. So there's two different games that use the Blitzkrieg system, and then you can combine them to play a 4-player team game like Blitzkrieg. So that's called Flintlock. So that's coming out next year.
From whom?
From Floodgate Games. Floodgate is not known for war games. They have like games like Sagrada and Kites, which are like family Euro-y kind of games. But they bought Blitzkrieg and all that line of games, that Caesar, Dogfight, all of those games they bought from PSC. So they own the rights to that series now. Okay.
Because Blitzkrieg's pretty neat. I have seen Caesar, but I have not seen, what's the other one you mentioned?
There's a game called Dogfight.
I have seen that. I've seen that.
I've only played Blitzkrieg. I love Blitzkrieg. The others they're in the line, but they're very different games.
Okay. Yeah, that's not a company that I think a lot of wargamers are going to be particularly familiar with. But hey, open your mind and try new stuff. Who was that again?
Floodgate.
Floodgate Games. Yep. Okay, and they'll be on BGG at this point. So
yep. They had a big booth at Gen Con, which is cool because anytime you can get sneak a war game into Gen Con, it's great. So they had a big booth with all their family games and stuff, and they had a prototype copy of Flintlock. So I saw it; it was looking good.
So I'm glad you got to go to Gen Con. I haven't been there for a long time.
Yeah.
One day I
Well,
will return.
it's. I mean,
Something else.
I don't like it. I mean, I say this all the time. I only go there because Osprey had General Orders Sengoku Jedi, which is the follow up to our first General Orders. So I was demoing it there, and I was demoing Sniper Elite. Otherwise, Gen Con's just not for me. It's too much.
It's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot. It's extra, as we say around here. I mean, you see the pictures, right? And you know it's not necessarily like this all the time, but there's that like opening shot that I've seen from like 6 Gen Cons now of people waiting for the dealer's room to open. Now at Origins, there will be hundreds of people in that line, right? There's actually more than one line, but there will be hundreds of people in each of that line. At Gen Con, it kind of looks like there's about 10,000
Yeah, probably.
waiting to go in.
There probably is 10,000 people.
It looks crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering whether when I should say we will hear a balcony collapse at Gen Con's story.
Yeah.
Because there was 7,000 people standing up there and waiting in line to get into the dealer's room. I mean, I haven't been there since the last year that it was in Milwaukee. So
yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons people go to Gen Con. There's a lot of things going on, but most people think about the vendor hall. And I mean, I was at Gen Con for 4 days. I had an exhibitor badge, so I was able to get in early, leave late. So I was able to walk around the vendor hall with nobody in there, and I came home with 0 things. So I mean,
wow.
I'm not a cult of the new guy. I don't need to buy the new hotness. So the crowd of 10,000 is just, that's not for me.
Yeah, man, it's the event draws something in the neighborhood of 50,000 people. So it's crazy. It's like I shudder to think what San Diego Comic-Con, which I have no intentions of ever going to. I'll do other things if I go to San Diego again. I got plans, but I'm not. No, I'm good. I'm good. That also looks absolutely bananas, and it's also. But there's a lot of games there. I do want to go back at some point. I may day trip out on a Sunday afternoon or something like that at some point before everything closes. But yeah, it looks terrifying. And I'm not like Dan, where it's, there'll be more than 3 people there. I can't go. We're gonna make fun of Dan the rest of the night because he's not here to defend himself. Not that that's any different from usual, to be honest. Even when he is here to defend himself. So are you getting to play anything these days?
I mean, some, right? So I usually when I get together, like I just played a game called Awari, which is like a very light area control game. It's a few years old, but again, I'm not a cult of the new guy. That was fun. But I mean, usually
is that the remake of? No, that's Ikoru. Never mind. I thought that was the remake of the old Samurai game or Shogun game from the Milton Bradley Game Master series from back in the day, which was a cool game, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's a remake of a game called Han and China and Web of Power. It's been a lot of different things over the years. I mean, of course, I've played the favorites recently. I've played Maria, Friedrich, that kind of stuff. But nothing new. Well, I mentioned it before. I told you that I'm a huge Paolo Mori fan. He has a game that came out not long ago called Toy Battle, which like looks kind of like the plastic World War II soldiers, that sort of like almost Toy Story aesthetic. It's a very abstract area control game. Plays in like 15 minutes, but it's really, really well done. Super minimalistic, super streamlined, but just like a quick, light, direct 2-player head-to-head abstract game. It's really good. Okay. Similar to Blitzkrieg in that regard.
Okay.
Honestly, yeah.
With that kind of tone, probably not for me. But hey, people should play with everybody should play whatever they like to play and have fun playing it. So I have gotten nothing. Well, I shouldn't say that. I haven't got any wargames played because my table's been junked up. But I'm in an RPG game, which I'll actually get to play, which is Twilight 2000, but run in GURPS, which is fun. So, Awari. Okay, this is not spelled even the way I think it was. One of the most played games in the Mancala family of Pit and Pebbles. Okay. I was looking at the Royal Game of again. If I assume we've all probably seen the legendary Professor Irving Finkel on YouTube talking about the game of That was the first known board game invented by the Sumerians in like 3,000 or 4,000 BC. So, We did have a question. Where is it? I would imagine the answer to this is no, by the way.
No.
Okay.
No, because I think we'll even put in the design notes that the book that came out that was super popular that claimed that Chung Ha may have visited North America was kind of, I mean, at this point it's been completely debunked.
Completely fictional?
Yeah. So no, we won't. I don't think, unless the world clamors for it and needs that, right? But
well, hey, expansion material if we decide we want to get that. Just because it's nonsense doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make a game about it.
Yep.
Right? I mean, I got all kind of games about nonsense. I had no idea that John Scalzi was at Gen Con, actually. I guess sounds like David didn't either.
No, I didn't.
But I am aware that he also lives in Southern Ohio, however, somewhere. I don't know where exactly. So, science fiction author for anybody who has not heard. Also from Wolf Dog, will there be any more War Chest expansions?
Yeah, so AEG is doing what they did with the last expansion, which is to say that they're running a Kickstarter. There's a bunch of stuff in it to include a bunch of expansions for other games. That is, I mean, it's in that stage of Kickstarter where you can go to the page and sign up to be notified. I don't think it has a launch date. So the expansion is done. It's called Shock Tactics. So it introduces some new units, a new mechanism. So that Kickstarter will be probably within a month or two, and that means the game will deliver at the end of the year, beginning of next year.
Okay, cool. Charles, the room's junked up too, but I got the table done, and now I'm working on the room. I relocated all the ASL material, so there will eventually be pictures if it becomes presentable, which is by no means guaranteed. So, do you ever have I'm not talking like a fist fight. Obviously, that hasn't happened, but like a general disagreement about some mechanic or other in your collaborative designs?
I mean, certainly, yeah, disagreements for sure. I mean, the question would be, what happens when we have disagreements and how are they resolved, right?
That is the question.
So, I mean, so yeah, absolutely disagreements. Those are handled differently based on the person it is, right? So how comfortable I am with them, etc. So if it's a person that I worked with really closely and know super well, then I can have a much more frank, upfront discussion about it. Generally, this is a huge generalization. Generally, I would say that it winds up we wind up deferring to the person that feels more passionate about what it is that was being debated, right? And so we don't do this much anymore, but Trevor and I, earlier on, would butt heads sometimes when it would come to, I might want something that's more closer to the historicity of the topic, and he might want something that's more streamlined from a more developed from a gameplay perspective. So I might want to go into a design with a bit of a higher chrome budget, if you will, right? A little more grit. For better or worse, I think that we've rubbed off a little bit on each other. So I think some of my tendencies he's adopted, and I've done the same with him. And so I think now we typically wind up having a very, very similar design aesthetic for the most part. There's still some times that, I'll have a much more elaborate approach to something that he'll be like, you're an idiot. Let's just boil this down to the absolute, whatever, most distilled version it can be. But I don't know. I can't think of a time that I've ever had a no kidding argument that wound up causing a problem with the relationship, that couldn't be resolved pretty easily.
Right. Well, we'll get only half as many games in 2026 if you and Trevor should have a falling out. So that better not happen.
That would not happen. I mean, it's funny. I mean, for sure, if I look across my life, I'm not a guy that I'm an introvert. I'm a textbook introvert. So I don't have a lot of friends. I have a handful of close friends, and I've moved around a lot. So when you look across my life, all of the people who I've met and become friends with and then stayed friends with and stayed in touch, which is not many, are all through gaming. And so Trevor has gone from being a guy I met when I moved to the UK to a design partner to probably my best friend in the world. So if we have a falling out, there's some issues.
It'll be drama, but nobody wants that. Yeah. Nobody wants drama. We got enough drama in this hobby, in gaming in general, not just us, but For those of us who sometimes wring our hands, and myself included, for over drama in wargaming, I can assure you every other corner of gaming is experiencing roughly the same amount of drama.
Yeah.
I think we actually in wargaming have less drama
Yes, I would agree with
certainly than like the video game people do.
Yeah.
And I frankly think we have less than the RPG people do, but we are a smaller hobby than either of those by orders of magnitude, and I think that could easily be a factor.
Yeah.
How much of the writing for something like War Story was that split equally, or did one of you do more of the writing?
So I can talk through the process because I think that's an interesting from a collaboration perspective because it's a little bit different than a lot of other projects. So
great.
So again, this Dave Neal and I met again at Cambridge. So he's part of that same Cambridge design group.
Are these guys all British? Are your co-designers, except for Liz, all British?
No. So what's interesting is Trevor's Canadian. I'm American. He's Canadian. We met in the UK, which is funny. Dave Neal actually is British, but that Cambridge group only had a couple of Brits in it. Australians, Spaniards, like people from all over, very few British. Dave Neal was one of the exceptions, so he is actually British. He is best known for his narrative work, so games like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective.
Oh, that was him? Wow, that's kind of a classic.
Well, he did one of the most popular sets, but he was not the original creator, right? So he's created sets for it, but not the original.
That was a while ago too.
Yes,
that was out in the 80s.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yep. He did, I think, this may be wrong, but I think he did the first set circa like mid 2010s when Asmodee bought the license. So it was a big release and it was big seller. So Dave approached me and he said he basically pitched the idea of War Story. He said, "Hey, I want to do something. I want to do something narrative, but with war game elements or military history theming or something." And so the way we approached that is there's a program called Twine. Twine is used for people to write essentially like RPG dialogue and video games, that kind of stuff. So it tracks all the super complex branching. And so we used that. Dave and I would get together and we would sketch out the general storyline. We would flip-flop about who's actually creating the actual branching narrative part of it. I would do all of the combat encounters. Now, you've not played War Story, right?
That is correct.
So the thing that's interesting about War Story that's super different, most people, if you said we're going to have this combo of narrative game plus a war game, the expectation would be that you read through a narrative and then a combat happens and you break out into a combat and you resolve the combat and you go back into the narrative. And War Story does not do that. So it is in the book, you're reading the narrative, you're making choices, and then you get to combat, and all of the combat is handled through the narrative, which is really cool and very different. But what it means is a single combat would take me something like 100 passages of actual branching narrative, where a player is only ever going to encounter maybe 10 to 15 of those passages because of the choices they make. So there's just an insane amount of writing that exists, though the player will only ever experience a very small amount.
Okay, yeah, John Butterfield and Eric Lee Smith will agree with you completely on this point.
Right. Yes, it's a very similar to that sort of approach that had to, solve the ambush problem, right? So I would work through all the structure, especially the combat stuff, design all the combats, etc., and then I would give it to Dave, and Dave would write actually all the prose that exists in the book. So that was our whatever, how we shared the load. So if you're reading text in the book, Dave wrote that text.
Okay. Let me get back to Wolfdog's second question here. Do you have any interest in ever doing an RPG?
So I would love to do I grew up on RPGs. I came from RPGs. I made a conscious decision in my late 20s, early 30s, something like that, to change from RPGs to board games because I thought stupidly, as I was getting married and having kids, that I would save a bunch of time switching because I was the DM. So I'm the DM that makes all this material that never gets played. I'm that guy. So I was spending so much time making all this material, and I was like, I'm going to switch to board games. They're much more self-contained and much lower, time investment. Well, yeah, of course, that is definitely not true. But
naturally, war games were right on the top of the list to investigate.
Designing games, of course, second job.
Right.
Yeah. So I would love to write an RPG. Now, I don't know. I don't think I have the skills to literally write it, if that makes sense. So I think, especially like the narrative, the fiction part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would have to collaborate with somebody where we split the design work, like I love doing the story development. So like in Undaunted, 2200 Callisto, like the sci-fi Undaunted,
Mm-hmm.
like I would sketch out, here's what's happening in the scenario. I'd write the scenario brief. I do all the art briefs, that kind of stuff. But the actual writing is the author that was hired to do it. There was also the guy that did Undaunted Stalingrad, who writes novels for like Games Workshop and stuff.
Oh,
right. So he's an actual author.
Okay.
So I would have to team with somebody, I think, that would feel more comfortable writing the fiction in the book.
Okay. Well, we may have to have a later discussion about that.
Yeah.
So my problem with designing stuff is I never get anything done. So, which is not a problem that David is experiencing, folks. So David has no idea what that's like. Well, actually, that's probably nonsense. You probably do have a file, a folder or a filing cabinet full of sort of half, in progress ideas that maybe you'll get back to at some point.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm super blessed. When I first started out, this is how every designer has to start out. You design a game and then you pitch the game, right? And
right.
You design and you pitch, and you design and you pitch.
Right. I got a couple of those.
Yeah, and so I'm super blessed now that I'm in a position where I basically don't do that anymore. I don't have the time to work on a project that may never get published, and so I'm either working on a series game or I work with a publisher ahead of time to make sure that there's a project that's going to have a home when it's over. So, for better or worse, I don't really have the luxury anymore of like kind of designing the idea with the idea that it may not become a real living thing. But that's a lot of pressure too, because I'm in situations now where a few of the projects I'm working on, they were on contract before the game design started, so it has to be a thing. It has
right now. You got deadline, like actual deadlines.
Yes, I can't fail. Right.
You don't want Osprey to be calling up and yelling at you.
Yeah, exactly.
Great question here. I tend to file. I organize largely by publisher personally to answer this question, just because usually the publisher will have a standard box size, so I will know where it can fit, like physically fit. So that's my standard methodology for just organizing stuff, which is, we're kind of in mid-organization basically all the time, right? That's a process one never finishes. Yeah. So are we looking at the shelf behind you? I see at least one Kallax behind you there. Are we looking at your, how big a games library? That's not that much, man. I got way more than that. And that's bad for me.
I'm extremely mercenary. I constantly call. Now, I'm blessed because my two main gaming buddies, local gaming buddies, I just gave them my copy of Combat Commander because I'm like, well, you have it because we're going to play it together so you can keep it rather than me keep it. So, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, yes, this is technically my gaming library, but like the three of us basically have a shared gaming library and they have way more games than I do. And then like all the stuff on the top is mine, right? So every time I make a game, that means a different game has to go. So,
well, you're going to run out of unless you're pitching your own games too. You're going to run out of Kallax at some point. Yeah, we'll see. I did. Here's a question from a meandering Mike. Are you going to do more I wouldn't count anything out for the Undaunted family of games personally, but any plans for additional standalones?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, if Line of Fire could be a series of games if people buy it, but I mean, it really just depends on whether there's interest in it or
not. That's a completely understandable position. Wargame Ramble organizes by publisher, so does John C. from the sunny Philippines, and yeah, you got a huge basement though, man. So you might not now. But you had a huge basement that you could store games in. I'm running out of basement personally. Do the kids have their own games libraries? I'd imagine the answer might be yes, huh?
My kid, oh my gosh, this is a sore subject. So my kids are now 16, 14, and 11. My oldest daughter has never been hugely into games. She said she wanted to start trying to play D&D again. We'll see. She's into the occasional social, like the Resist, Werewolf, that kind of stuff.
Right.
My son used to be my 2-player game guy, right? Like head-to-head 2-player games. I've completely lost him. He's no interest. He's interested in joining chess club at school, so we'll see if he does that. But and then my 14-year-old daughter used to be my like everything. She would play war games. She'd play anything, and I've lost her too. So none of the kids have gaming libraries, and none of the kids are actively really playing games right now. So
well, you never know. They could get back. They could come back after. I've seen that. Right, I've seen that happen. I mean, Gary Gygax's kids. Some of Gary Gygax's kids did that, so they ended up leaving and coming back. So, it's. Do you have a favorite game actually of any kind, not just war games?
Yeah, for sure. Maria is up there. El Grande is one of my all-time favorites. Have you ever played El Grande?
Absolutely not. I don't. I'm not even sure I know what El Grande is.
El Grande
other than that, it's obviously very large.
It's big. It's a mid-90s area control Euro, but unlike most Euro, people talk about Euros, multiplayer solitaire or being friendly. It's none of that. It is really like in your face area control. It's a fantastic game. El Grande, Maria, a Few Acres of Snow. I think that's probably my top 3.
Okay, completely reasonable. I should probably. I would tell folks what my favorite game is, but I'm not doing that today. I'll do a video on it. Since I'm close now to be back in the business of making videos that aren't just me yapping in front of the computer. That would be cool. Jeff Beeler organizes by subject and area. I did that for a while, and I just have too much stuff now to really make that work. So. That was back in the days when I had 200 war games, and now I got like 750 war games, and it's a lot. It's a lot, and that's not the only games I have either. The RPG stuff is eating this office, for example. So, are you doing any role playing stuff
in terms of playing?
Yeah. I know you dip in occasionally.
Yeah. But... I mean, so like I said, Mike, we're gonna try D&D with the kids again. And this is an interesting thing, and this is why D&D continues to be the top RPG. My kids want to play D&D, and they want to play D&D because they know that they've heard of D&D, they know what D&D is, they see D&D on Stranger Things. I kind of hate D&D. I mean, not hate D&D. That's over. I'm being hyperbolic, but like of all the RPGs in the world to play, like I'd much rather play a rules light, simple, streamlined game. But they know D&D, so that's what they want to play.
Shadow Dark.
Yeah.
Just run this and tell them they're playing D&D, because it is D&D, right?
Yeah.
It's just an incredibly tight and compact way to play D&D.
Yeah. Now, what I really, really want to play, I desperately want to play a Star Trek game. So I've looked at the who is it? Modifius, right? They have the
Star Trek Adventures, yeah.
Yeah, so I've looked at it multiple times. I've thought about buying. I've literally held at Origins. I had the solo version in my hands multiple times, and I've almost pulled the trigger. But I know myself, and I'm not going to get a group together. We're not going to play it, and I'm not going to sit down and play the solo system. I'm just not going to do it. So we'll see. But I desperately want to play a Star Trek RPG.
Well, I can't help you with that, but I promise that I will eventually run Traveler, and you could play that. Okay, how about that?
I will. Don't make me learn the rules. As long as you run the rules.
Oh, don't worry. But for that kind of thing, I use Classic Traveler. It's character creation takes 5 minutes, and off you go. So don't worry about that.
And to be clear, I don't need to play a Star Trek RPG. I just want to play in that type of. And it doesn't even have to be Star Trek. You can file the numbers off, whatever. I just want to play that sort of sci-fi.
Okay, I think that's completely fair. I like Modifius' Star Trek Adventures. I think it's a pretty neat game. It does what it tries to do, which is to kind of make sure that your game sessions are kind of structured like Star Trek episodes.
Okay.
And I think it does so in a very clever way. And it might be my favorite implementation of their house system.
Okay.
It might not be. Dune is pretty good too. I like the John Carter game, but I appear to be me and Mark Herman are the only people interested in that apparently. So, So there's that. Now, Danny Seckery points out that you do look a little bit like Ethan Peck, the current Spock from Strange New Worlds.
Okay.
So
All right.
a little bit. I'll have to see it when you have your pointed ears on. But yeah, we'll see how that works out. John Harper is the designer of. I'm trying to remember what he's best known for. I have not seen Lasers and Feelings.
Lasers and Feelings.
Lasers and Feelings sounds like possibly not for me, but I'll try anything once. I did that for a while. Are you aware of the what's it called? There's like an indie RPG room at Origins. No. I was in until I got Brant dragged me into running war games all Origins every year. I would usually pop in there for 2 or 3 sessions every Origins, and it's a great opportunity to try like independent RPGs and stuff like that. Try different stuff and all that. So this makes me angry. They also did this with the Conan game. I like their Conan game actually, which they lost the license to that. So
isn't Conan public domain?
So yes, some of the stories are public domain.
Okay,
but there's like a company, I forget who owns the properties now, that you'd have to potentially tangle with if you'd wanted to do something different. But some of the stories have actually passed, I think, have passed into the public domain.
Yeah.
Same deal with John Carter. Some of those are in. The first book came out in like 1912. That's in the public domain. So I'm not positive about the Conan. To be honest about it. So I would not want to tangle with somebody's legal department for that.
Yeah, true.
So what, are you going to hit any other conventions this year?
SDHISCon.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make it. I had to tell Harold. He says, we'll miss you there. And I said, I'll miss me there. Because it's a cool convention, other than the lighting, which is dreadful. But everything else was awesome.
Yeah. So now you've not been to Circle DC, correct?
I have not. No. Now the good news is Circle DC is closer, like a lot closer. So that's but it's in like February or March, isn't it?
I think it's late March. I think late March is when Kevin's gonna have it.
Well, I guess I don't know. I'd probably be in. I don't know. It's not impossible. Let me put it that way. But it didn't happen this year, and is unlikely to happen as soon as next March.
I just raise it because to me those two are very similar experiences.
I've heard that they have a very similar tone and vibe.
Yeah,
which I could believe just seeing pictures, because honestly, there's a lot of the same people there.
Yep. Yeah. Yes.
So, but yeah, unlikely. My conventions are Winterfest and Origins. Those are not optional for me because those are like my favorite conventions. Yeah. I'll do the same thing I did this year. I'll do a big war game at Winterfest, and I'm gonna take Origins. I'll be around, of course, so I'll see you. But I'm gonna not run war games this coming Origins. I need a year off from it. I need to just go and have fun. I'm not even getting a comped badge this time. I'm gonna just pay for it, because that way I will not feel obliged to anybody. I've already let the Enterprise Games people know that I will be happy to help them unload, but beyond that, because they need the help, frankly.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm good. Modifius had a license, I can tell you that, and Funcom, who actually I think might own the rights now to Conan, has a license from whoever it is. So, or if it's not themselves now. No, that is not, doesn't appear to be a completely clear. Yeah, Brant was the first person. Well, he was the second person I told. My wife was the first person I told. Are you ever going to bring I guess if they're not gaming, there's no point in bringing the family to Origins, huh?
My oldest daughter has asked to go to Gen Con. She wants to experience Gen Con, which is just horrible to me. My kids have gone to Origins once on a Sunday. My wife brought them over, and we hung out, during the day. If they want to come, I'd happily bring them over on a Sunday when it's a little chill, and it's. Mm-hmm. But yeah, right now. Now I say all that. The one thing I will say, and I'm sure I've talked to you about this before, that we do every year and they love, is Weekend Werewolf. Have I mentioned that to you?
So is that the Werewolf the social game?
It's there's Ravenwood Castle in Hocking
Yeah.
Hills, right? And so it's a weekend long 60-player werewolf session. And so the kids love it. Because it's just this huge meta game of werewolf that straddles from Friday night to Sunday morning. And then in between voting rounds, like every 3 hours you go and vote and you kill people and you do the werewolf thing. But in the midst of that, you're playing board games and stuff. And so
Okay.
yeah, that's super fun.
Okay, that's cool. Hocking Hills is not very far from me either. So
yeah, no, it's easy drive for me. It's like an hour and a half, 2 hours, so super close. Yep.
Yeah. That sounds. Have you ever been to WBC? That's actually a good question.
I have been to what's the name of the resort?
Seven Springs.
Seven Springs. I've been to Seven Springs, but not for WBC. I went there. Okay. I met up a couple of buddies, because it was a midway point, and we had a gaming weekend in a place there. But I've never been to WBC because WBC is at the same time as Gen Con, and I don't have to, but I go to Gen Con every year because I always have a game coming out with Osprey. And so I'm always demoing at Gen Con. So if I ever don't have a game release at Gen Con, I will go to WBC.
Okay, there you go. So now we know. Yeah, it's pretty close. It's like 45 minutes from here, as I recall, from me. So it's probably, like you said, about an hour and a half. That's not a big deal. Molotov Cocktail says that you make solo masterpieces and the kids only play party games. No, I have actually never done the social deduction game of any kind. Actually, yeah, I mean, even like Battlestar Galactica, in a way, kind of looks like it has a lot of that element too. Yeah, and I've never played that. I hear it's good. Okay.
It does. I mean, it's to me, I don't think it's a good idea to have social deduction games that run really long, and Battlestar Galactica famously runs really long.
Okay.
I mean, I like to, if you're going to do it, I like them to be 10, 15-minute experiences so that you don't just get, you can just kind of drag on. Right. But like I said, my son used to play War Chest with me all the time. My daughter used to play everything. And, I never pushed my own games on anybody, so I would never ask them to play my stuff. But they would. They would ask to play that, and that was cool. But yeah, it is funny.
So to remove this question from the realm of an actual possibility of it happening, let's say if you could design a game with any deceased game designer, who might that be?
Deceased game designer. Probably Gary Gygax, just because I grew up on D&D, I guess. Right?
Gary did do at least one collaborative game, I can tell you that. Or collaborated it multiple times, really. But
yeah, and really it would be more just to chat with him. I don't know if we would produce a game. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure who that would be, really. But I think that would be the person that I would want to speak with about it, whether we produced a game or not. Who knows?
Fair. I have been fortunate enough to have spoken with Gary on more than one occasion. So
yeah.
Richard Berg and David Thompson co-design. Actually, this is a great. Actually, this sort of gets into another question I wanted to ask. Because you have not really. I know you've played some of this stuff, but you haven't really done the classic Hex Encounter type of thing. Does that design space tempt you at all?
It scares me. It scares me because, so if people that look at my games, when I design even my bulge game is Lansworth Ridge. It's like super zoomed in. For two reasons. One, I really enjoy research at that level, like that hyper detailed, specific level. But also because I can make a Lansworth Ridge game, and I can feel pretty confident when I make that game that I am, from a board game design perspective, I know that topic at mastery level at that point by the time it comes out, and I feel comfortable with that. If I was to make a bulge Hex Encounter game, for example, I would come out with a game that everybody knows more about the history than I do, and it has 50 years of Hex Encounter baggage that I can't begin to understand and fully appreciate. So unless I was coming at it from the perspective of I'm going to take loosely the Hex Encounter aesthetic and try to completely approach it from my own way. If that was the goal, then I guess. But I mean, yeah. Otherwise, it's just
Yeah, folks, thumbs up the video if you haven't done so already.
Yeah, it would be really, really intimidating to try to make a traditional quote unquote hex encounter game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of where my space is at for war games, though. So I would feel uncomfortable using, not a hex encounter.
Right.
Well, maybe not. I mean, it's not like I've never played a game that wasn't a hex encounter war game. There's tons of them. Some war games that are much more abstract is the term I tend to use. How would you describe if you were talking to some random person at a demo at Gen Con, for example, and who had played hex counter games? So let's say they'd played Squad Leader or something like that, right? And but you're trying to sell them on the obvious point of crossover. Let's use the Valiant Defense because I know that there's multiple castle. There's two different versions of the Castle Litter scenario. I've realized now, and I know there's at least one, and probably more than that, on the Danzig post office. So let's say you're trying to explain the difference between, say, soldiers in postman's uniform and playing that in ASL.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, here's a really good discussion is compare soldier. Well, let's take Castle Litter, and the reason I suggest it is because I'm sure there's a Castle Litter ASL scenario.
There is,
right? Okay. And then there's Castle Litter, the game I designed, and then there is a Castle Litter free scenario for Undaunted. Okay.
Okay.
So this is like a very interesting spectrum because the Castle Litter game I designed is, I would argue, probably like the most historically representative because I created the game. Like it's a game, a bespoke game designed around that topic. And so every counter is an actual person and they have their actual weapon and all the things that haven't historically can happen in the game. Mm-hmm. So it models, quote unquote, models the history in a much more representative way than the ASL module does. The ASL module is or ASL in general is much more complex, but like from a history, like matching the actual representation of the history, Castle Litter does a much more accurate, quote unquote, job. Now, the Undaunted scenario was essentially a grafted onto the Undaunted system to loosely represent kind of what happened in Castle Litter, which is like abstraction beyond abstraction beyond abstraction, right? So, I mean, it just can kind of run the gamut depending on the game. And so, that's just true of like comparing Undaunted as a system to any, like I said, bespoke or whatever we want to call it, like system specific or unique game design about a historical topic. And I approach them very differently, because you have to. But the whole goal, the whole audience, the whole, like I mentioned before, Chrome budget for these games is just completely from before the design starts. Hey, this is by Stealth and Sea. It's about Italian human torpedo operators, and the only people that's going to buy this game are hardcore war gamers. So Chrome budget's through the roof, right? I can do stupid shit, and they'll accept it because they're war gamers. Versus, I need a dad and his son to sit down and play this game in 30 minutes, right? Two very different things.
And it's Joe's pointing out here, Herman and some other folks too are innovating on just the hex encounter formulas as well, right? I think we could definitely see a lot of that in Herman's designs. Check out our interview with Herman last week where Dan was here. So hopefully everything's okay. I haven't heard anything from him since yesterday, so I'm sure everything is okay. And that he has just passed out in a stupor from whatever herbs he has consumed today. But do you have any... this is a good question from Jeff Beeler. Iter, Pavlov, and Lanzarath are like kind of specific, and not even battles, right? But like actions.
Right. Yep.
Are there any other actions you think would be good targets for that?
For that series, yeah. So I've talked about this before. One of them that I really want to do, and it would be the first not World War II one, is the Siege of Jetetville. So I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's the UN and Katanga scenario. So that's something I would really like to explore. It's a little bit more recent than anything I've ever done before. It's a little more, current, but I mean, it's still mid 50s. So I think it's safe.
Okay.
That's probably the next one I would like to in that series. I would like to explore.
Okay.
That series is sort of on a little bit of a hiatus for me right now. So I'm not sure what the future holds. It's certainly not near term, but that's probably the next topic I would want to explore.
Okay. Yeah, Drang might be interesting as well, for that matter.
Mm.
If I forgot the question, I had a great question that I was about to ask, and so actually here. So you've got what I would consider two very successful series in Valiant Defense and in Undaunted, and other stuff as well. But to take those as examples, did you know or plan that those were going to end up being families of games rather than just standalone things?
So definitely not for either of them when the design was underway. So Castle Litter was very much, like I said, my first war game design, my first solo game design, et cetera, et cetera. So when I was working on it, it was for a Board Game Geek design competition. That's why I created it, and just to see if I could do it. And so I created it, and then after I finished it,
I'd say it worked.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was great. But after I finished it, I thought, well, I really enjoyed this. I liked doing it. Let's see if I can find a similar battle. And so I posted a couple of places saying, hey, does anybody have any other thoughts on something that might be a good fit? And so somebody had suggested Pavlov's House, and so that kind of morphed into its own little series organically. Now, Undaunted is an interesting case because I started the design in like 2014. The game was not published until 2019. It went through a crazy, life of, it was with publishers that never published it, and I got the rights back and all of that stuff. But I guess Osprey believed in it quite a bit because we actually signed a contract to do Undaunted North Africa before Normandy came out. So they must have thought that it was going to do well. So technically, I guess, yes, I knew it was going to be a family before it was published. But certainly during the design process, that was not ever the plan, right? It was, hey, I want to make this game, make the game, and then things evolved from there.
Right. As Jeff T points out, there is a movie called Siege of Jadotville. I'm not sure. I have not seen the film, so or like a Black Hawk Down type of situation. That's based on an actual action as well.
Yep.
So. I think as Molotov Cocktail points out for Undaunted, I think the possibilities are just limited by our own knowledge of situations that would apply to it. Those situations are out there, right?
Yep.
Undaunted Camelot. Will there be? There is now a science fiction Undaunted, thanks to Callisto. Will there one day be a fantasy Undaunted?
It's already done. It's already on the way.
There you go. So. There you go. David knocked that out this morning, anticipating that this question would come out from you, Mike. So, Prophetic Albion thinks that the Undaunted games present the personal feeling of combat, like you see in the movies, and it's a different perspective. Sure, I can't argue with that. And Andrew Cook is a fan of For What Remains. So
yeah, that's an interesting a little aside. For What Remains is a game I started designing before I even knew war games and board games existed. So it comes from my background in RPGs and Blood Bowl and the original Mage Knight Clicks, like little Clicks figures, miniature skirmish games. So I was designing what would eventually become For What Remains, not knowing that there was a such thing as modern board games.
Okay. I have played HeroClix. I have not played HeroClix, I should say. I have played the Click games in general. I played the Marvel one.
Oh yeah, so
which was fun.
Yeah, and they come from the origin for all of that was Mage Knight. And I played Mage Knight. I grew up on JRPGs, like Final Fantasy Tactics and that kind of stuff. So all of that feeds into For What Remains. But what's interesting about that is it took me so long to design the game and get it published that by the time it finally came out and DVG published it, I knew about war games. And so there's things in For What Remains like CHIT pool and that kind of stuff. Like there's interesting war game things that have been baked into it. So
So I'm going to pitch an idea to you, and no one has taken this idea up except Wes Crawford, and Richard Berg. Civil War train game. I think there's a ton of potential there.
I don't know about Civil. Yeah, that would be interesting. And I guess now I'm making Civil War games, so anything's possible, right? I've got one
There
on
you
the way. But I really, really, really want to make a game about Polish armored trains at the beginning of World War II. You know, that very short period of time, the Poles had 12 armored trains that were doing everything. You know, they were doing artillery support. They were in the fight, and so I would love to do a game about the Polish armored trains for the first 3 days of World War II. That would be cool.
And Hexy popping in might have given me the idea that Civil War trade games are a vast undertapped market, in my opinion. I still got to get, I forget what Berg's game is called, but I have it. At some point, I'll actually put it on the Confederate Rails, actually. I think that's it. Yeah, that might be the bird design. All right, folks, we are out of time. David, the handsomest man in wargaming, I would like to say thanks so much for joining us this evening. You have been a much better... I had to come up with all the questions, though. Usually I can count on Dan spouting off some... and I can come up with questions and jot them down while that's happening. I did not have that luxury this evening. So I want to say...
having me. This is great.
It's always a delight. I'm sure we'll be delighted to have you back at some point. And at some point, we should get together and actually play some stuff together.
Yes.
Because we're both in Ohio. We are kind of at opposite corners of Ohio, to be fair. But it's not that far. It's Ohio. It's not like we're in Russia. Yep. And one of us is in Moscow and the other one's in Vladivostok. So, all right. So thanks once again, everybody. Have a great rest of the night. We'll see you all again soon. We will be back next Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time.